Before I fully start, a few technical aspects. We've got in Austria and in Finland two of our guests. It's Bernhard Mair and Niels Hanssen. So they are not in the same room as Michel and I am. So that might sometimes be seen in the interaction that we do have. Nevertheless, we're really happy that we got these experts in today. And secondly, between what you see on your screen and what we are telling you, there is sometimes a time gap of 20 to 30 seconds. No need to worry at all, but if you ask a question, which we hope you do, that's what we're looking for, be aware of this time gap. So by the time you position a question, we might actually in live be a bit further down the line already. So that might sometimes require a bit of flexibility in maneuvering those questions into the dialogue or the discussion that we do have. Anyway, welcome everybody. I mentioned the four presenters of today, kindly, or the three presenters of today. We've got in Austria, we've got Bernhard Mair. Bernhard, welcome.
Hello, I'm actually sitting in Finland. Never mind that. I'm Austrian, but I sit in Finland. Hello, everybody.
Excuse me.
No problem.
We've got Niels Hanssen.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you, Pascal and the UC group for the invitation.
Appreciate it. And in the room here is my colleague Michel Bronsema.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Who's our domain expert on automation and mechanization projects. And I will be moderating, but normally we have a lot of dialogue where I will be involved, but looking at the preparation we've done, it will be mostly Michel, Niels and Bernhard you will hear today. And I will be taking care of the questions that you feed to us to make sure they are positioned as well, if required. Like Bernhard and Niels said, thank you UC Group. Who is UC Group? UC Group is an interim and consultancy firm based in the Netherlands. And we provide consultancy in the sectors logistics, service providers, industry, and retail. And what we do, what we're keen up, is that we are capable with our team of experts, which consists of about 50 professionals, to not only provide consultancy, but we also have specific consultants in the service to really realize the realization. So we deliver what we consult, and that is what kind of makes us unique in the market. And that's what we try to do. And meanwhile, we will try to deliver our knowledge to the market like we do today with this webinar, but also with some other webinars we did over the last few weeks, which can be seen at YouTube, on our channel, and on podcasts in Spotify, for instance. So feel free to have a look there and also look back at this webinar later on. This will not be posted straight away today, but in the coming days that this will be posted, so you can easily look back hear back what you've seen.
If I may add additionally to that, this is in English. This webinar will be conducted in English. Some of those other webinars that you might find back will be in Dutch. So
thanks for that, because I'm aware we have a lot of English speaking population on the other side. Thanks, Michel. That's very valuable. We also have two guests from Rocla. I kindly leave over to Niels to introduce themselves.
Yes, thank you, Pascal. Well, Rocla OY actually recently changed their name in the beginning of April to Mitsubishi Logisnext Europe OY. Rocla has been a group company for a long time now. And we are manufacturing electric warehouse and counterbalance trucks, as well as Rocla branded AGVs in our facilities in Järvenpää, Finland, and of course providing entire intralogistics solutions and their services throughout our entire product life cycles. Well, if you go to the next slide, the automation business of MLE is actually established or has had the first implementation of AGV systems in 1983. Rocla itself is already founded in 1943. In the 50s, we already started handling material transports. And since more than 35 years, we are doing also AGV systems. During that time, we had over 7,000 vehicles delivered in more than 1,000 projects. That also includes the projects of our partners. And currently we are doing approximately 30 projects annually with 150 to 200 vehicles per year. And our channels are basically direct sales, and then via our partners, such as the UC Group, and then obviously we have the ML Mitsubishi Logisnext dealer network, which also provides our solutions and the service abilities for our systems locally.
Clear, thanks. Well said, Niels. You clearly have a big track record as a company and as a professional in delivering the content of today. So I'm happy. I'm really happy that you and your colleague are here today, and giving a bit of knowledge back to the market. Let's dig into what every listener is listening for, I guess. Michel, I would like to give you the words, please.
Thanks, Pascal. As mentioned, we'll be setting this webinar up through a number of questions to have a dialogue on a number of topics. First one being market developments and some product innovation. I'd like to start off with the graph that you can see now on your screen. This graph shows the AGV market growth from 2016 onward until 2024, so we're roughly in the middle now, 2020. Where we see that both for the Asian and European market, growth expectations are highest, which is also something which I referred to in the previous webinar. And the question we have basically is, looking at those graphs, Niels, can you give us an idea of what will be the most profound developments for the European or even the Dutch specifically market?
Well, on the European scale, I would say the most profound development is obviously the vast growth on the AGV market. There is a significant increase of service providers for AGV solutions and vehicles, and that I would consider as a good sign for the market actually kicking off right now, considering that the market is actually the first systems installed in Europe in '63 in the UK, and now after the recent developments, we can say that this market has now really kicked off.
Okay.
For the top market trends, if I go straight to that, would be that at the moment I'd say is the needs for the customers in terms of mixed fleet applications, interfaces for the opportunity to actually utilize a different kind of AGV suppliers within one system, and interlinking actually the entire processes in one holistic intralogistic solution.
Okay.
Right. And when you mention, you just mentioned, do you mean by that a mixed fleet in the sense of both AGV automated, an automated part of a fleet, as well as a manual aspect?
Yes, absolutely. So the need on the markets is obviously so that all the components within a process are interacting with each other and are timed with each other in a very high level. So the need on the market is obviously that also the manual transports in a company are included in these kind of fully automated solutions.
Right, and I can assume then, Bernhard, a question for you.
Yeah.
That will also cause complications on not talking about implementation yet, but it will have complications, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, for this point here, definitely we need to quickly step out of the marketing thing and say, well, how does it work in implementation? I think that mixed traffic is always an alarm bell for me as a project manager because of well, it's a safety issue. Definitely, sure. That's one thing. Another thing is that if you have manual versus the AGV crossing path, you might have actually create traffic jams. The discussion I had actually this morning with a customer, they have 30 vehicles and there's a crossing path now suddenly coming up. well, all the 30 vehicles suddenly are in a traffic jam, and we have the same as in summer when everybody wants to go on vacation once they're allowed again. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. So I would like the audience to understand, not immediately jump ahead and say that, oh yeah, hey, mixed traffic, that's great. There are some implications in the implementation to consider, definitely.
We can circle back on it later.
Yeah, perfect.
Any indication, Niels, as to where the AGV market is heading within Europe, let's say?
Well, there is an increasing demand, obvious, because the markets, also big players in the manual market side, are actually adding to their product portfolio AGV solutions, and the technologies are well tested, as mentioned earlier. 63, the first installation, so those solutions are reliable and have a very high availability, and therefore can be considered as an essential part of any process, production or distribution or logistic process in general within a company.
Right. And in terms of innovations, is there anything particularly that you notice from your client base that is particularly being looked forward to in terms of development?
Well, it is definitely the mixed fleet need, right. The need of mixed fleet or integration of the entire flows within one system, and then also interfaces between the systems to make them more, make them easier, and give the ability to many different vendors to actually interact with each other in the same system.
Okay. Next slide, please.
Yes.
So once a company has made up its mind to start using AGVs and they approach a supplier, they've obviously gone through a process to come up with a motivation on why they want to start using AGVs or automation in general. Is there a typical rationale to be found behind that motivation in your experience? How do they come to that decision?
Well, I would maybe take here two examples. For once is the demographic change in our society. So there are less and less people actually available to as operators for such simple tasks as forklift driving. And the other point is also the economic point of view. So these systems start to be quite affordable. The increase of the demand also increases economy of scale, basically, and therefore makes the components necessary for such systems from a cost perspective or return of investment perspective very attractive for our customers.
Right. Sorry.
And if I can jump in here quickly as
Please.
well, that I can bring an example, an additional one. It's China. You wouldn't believe, but we also do projects in China where labor is actually fairly cheap, but still the Chinese told me that it's cheaper to run that system actually because it also runs 24/7. And that is one thing, but otherwise the same things what Niels just mentioned apply also for China, for example, where you have basically cheap labor. So yeah, they are affordable and they are available, basically. That's a big thing.
And in terms of logistics organizations, when you look at the cross-section of your logistics customers, is there any difference between those and the rest of the market? Any specific elements that stand out, or is it across the board the same?
It is basically across the board pretty much the same, but of course logistics companies are looking to optimize their material flows as much as possible. So all terms like just-in-time or just on-time deliveries become very important, specifically if you support any production process. Loading and unloading is happening within certain time windows, and to have an automated system where you can plan those windows precisely and is of course very attractive for any company in production or also in logistics.
Okay. Next slide, please. So In terms of, you briefly mentioned that costs are coming down for in terms of investment. Also, then the return on that investment is faster. Are there any specific elements usually used to determine this ROI? How do clients generally calculate their ROIs? What is it based on?
Well, the most common approach is, of course, set the cost of an operator and the manual equipment against the invest of an AGV system, and of course the running cost of an AGV system, services and everything. But a very common parameter would be also the fact that AGV systems cause no damage to the goods once they are in operation, also not to the infrastructure. That is also an important factor and can bring the return of investment considerably down, depending, of course, on the product you are handling.
Yeah.
Clear. And then from my side, Michel, if I may step in, because you also mentioned the demographics. So there are less and less operators available to manually do the workload that AGVs can do. How is that taking into account? That's not specifically directly a cost impact, only indirect.
It is indirect, and it is also the point that, of course, an operator, when you have more, you can assign tasks to your operators, which would be a bit more valuable to the company than just executing a transport from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, of course, it's also economical point of view, because if you have one of your employees and you're paying for him, and he can be a much more constructive or more efficient work than only driving a forklift. So it doesn't come into the ROI calculation itself, but I think this is definitely an subject to be considered.
Clear.
And do they generally ask your input? Any companies that wish to introduce AGVs, or are they generally speaking able to come up with those figures themselves, or do you cooperate in that?
We definitely cooperate and support our customers with that, but in the most cases, the customers are more than capable to calculate this return of investment by themselves. But we can provide, of course, certain tools and also input from our experience what things could be considered in such calculations.
Yeah. So there's certainly participation. Yeah. Next slide.
So if I quickly jump in here, consider also the 24/7 what AGVs can do compared to manual drivers. I mean, that's also something.
Yeah.
Clear.
In terms of investments, how do you see those costs developing in the future?
Well, I believe that the AGV market is going to increase considerably within the next 5 years, which, of course, again, economy of scale will bring the components, essential components, and also expensive components such as safety scanners, navigation technologies, bring those costs very much down. Therefore, I believe that this will have also an impact on an easier decision to move towards an AGV system.
Okay, but if I'm a CEO, what should I do? Should I wait for 2 more years, or should I start now? What would make that difference?
Well, as earlier you start with the automation, as faster you can start saving with it and make quite detailed planning on your processes. Mm-hmm. So I would pretty much suggest start as early as you can with the automation.
Yeah.
Certainly also in light, when we're looking at the next slide, with the current pandemic, COVID-19, do you see that having any impact on sales in general, implementations?
Well, I believe for the time being, it is so that COVID-19 gives the chance for our clients to actually concentrate a little bit more on their planning and their future considerations, which in that respect shows in inquiries and the support we provide to our customers.